It is 9:55 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the 29th day of September 2025, and this is episode 1178 of Bitcoin, and it's all the news you can use about Bitcoin and more. That's why you're here, and we're going to start the day off with a post from Callie BTC. He's one of the guys behind Cashew. He is a contributor to BitChat. He's the one that did the Android stuff. He's got some good things to say about, well, this whole nonsense behind knots versus core. This has gotten out of control, people. This is out of control. Everybody is ready to rip everybody else's head off. And my question, as always, is this: why do we follow the same pattern? Why is it that when Bitcoin really starts to rip and we get around all-time highs, we end up destroying ourselves with the infighting? And I'm not going to say any more about that crap because no one's going to listen to me. But it is almost like freaking clockwork. 2017, we start ramping up. We start going like uber parabolic. And what happens? Roger Ver decides he wants to fork Bitcoin because reasons. And then the New York Agreement happens because reasons. And then everybody wants to control Bitcoin because reasons. And we get a blow off top. And now the same thing is happening here. We're at all-time highs. We're steady above 100,000. And what happens? We get the heaviest hitters in the Bitcoin space duking it out over spam or supposed spam, as if that's the most important thing right now. It's not. But we've got Nick Szabo is also going to weigh in on the knots versus core issue. It's not just going to be just Callie. And if you don't know who Nick Szabo is, he sort of backed off of developing for Bitcoin Core I want to say a couple of years ago. And we haven't heard a word out of Nick Szabo since until today. He's back. But that's not going to be all we talk about. There is other news out there. Plan B Network, well, they've launched a Bitcoin pitch contest you might be interested in. We got a report on how USDT and USDC stablecoins are doing, and it's rather surprising, honestly. Poland has done pissed off everybody in the space because, well, they've got a bill that they want to push through, and it seems like it's going to happen, and it's pretty nasty. Strategy, well, they bought more Bitcoin, not a lot, but there's some other things about this particular buy that I find interesting. And BitChat, speaking of Callie, BitChat is back in the news today because, well, another country is up in arms about something. And then we have SWIFT. Ah, yes, the interbanking payment thing that if you're like, if you make a transfer from one bank to another, you're using SWIFT. Even if you don't necessarily use SWIFT yourself, the banks are. And they want, instead of just using Bitcoin, no, they want to build their very own blockchain. We'll get into it. And Vanguard bends the freaking knee. Now remember, Vanguard staunchly said on day one of the release of the Bitcoin ETFs that they were never going to offer Bitcoin or any Bitcoin products to their customers because they didn't believe in it. Well, times change. Let's talk about this Callie post, which is, yes, it's on X, but I'm sure it's probably found on Nostr as well. But let's just look at this. This is his post, and he says, this is a long post that hopefully bridges some gaps between technical people like developers and non-technical users and how they look at spam prevention in Bitcoin. I hope that it clarifies why I think that there is such a huge misunderstanding between both camps. I'll preface this post with first disqualifying any malicious attempts to misrepresent the motives of either camp. Everybody wants to improve Bitcoin as money. Money is Bitcoin's use case. It's not a data storage system. If you think otherwise, there are countless shitcoins you can play with. Let's get into it. I have worked on anonymous systems for over a decade. I have read tons of research on spam detection, rate limiting, and I've implemented spam prevention techniques in the real world. I am very confident to say that there is not a single known method to prevent spam in decentralized, anonymous, open networks other than proof of work. This is what Satoshi realized when he designed Bitcoin, and it's why only transaction fees can reliably fight spam without sacrificing any of Bitcoin's properties. Let me explain. Spam prevention is a cat and mouse game. As a systems architect, your goal is to make the life of a spammer harder. You increase the friction. This is why on the web you see CAPTCHAs, signups, or anything that can artificially slow you down. Slowing down is key. This is why Satoshi turned to proof of work. Let's contrast this to other methods of spam prevention. This is not an exhaustive list, but it illustrates the design space of this problem. Other methods are often derivatives of these. CAPTCHAs. CAPTCHAs are a centralized form of work or proof of work for humans. Google servers give you a hard-to-solve task, like select all the bicycles, that will slow you down that you can't bombard a website with millions of requests. It requires centralization. You need to prove to Google that you're human so that you can use another website. If you could host your own CAPTCHA service, why would anyone believe you're not cheating? Logins. Logins with email and passwords are the most popular way to slow down users. Before you can sign up, you need to get an email address, and to get an email address, you often need a phone number today. The purpose of this, again, is to slow you down and to track you, to be honest. It only works well when emails are hard to get, like in a centralized web where Google controls how hard it is to get an email account. If you could easily use your own email server, why would anyone believe you're not a bot? The next one is the most relevant to Bitcoin. Ad block filters. These are another form of spam prevention, but this time the roles are reversed. You as a user fight against the spam from websites and advertising companies trying to invade your brain. Ad blocking works only under certain conditions. First, you need to be able to spell out what the spam looks like what the filter should filter out. Second, you need to update your filters every time someone circumvents them. Have you ever installed a YouTube ad blocker and then noticed that it stops working after a few weeks? That's because you're playing cat and mouse with YouTube. You block, they circumvent, you update your filters, rinse and repeat. The fact that you need to update your filters is critical, and that's where it ties back to Bitcoin. Suppose you have a mempool filter for transactions with a lock time of 21, because some stupid NFT project uses that. You maybe slow them down for a few weeks, but then they notice it and change their lock time to 22. You're back at 0. The spam filter doesn't work anymore. What do? You update your filter, but where do you get your new filter from? You need a governing body or some centralized entity that keeps updating these filters, and you need to download their new rules every single day. That's what ad blockers in your web browser do. They trust a centralized authority to know what's best for you and blindly accept their new filters every single day. I hope you see the issue here. Nobody should even consider this idea of constantly updating filter rules for Bitcoin. This would give the filter providers a concerning level of power and trust. It would turn Bitcoin into a centrally planned system, the opposite of what makes Bitcoin special. This is why filters do not work for decentralized anonymous systems. They require a central authority. Until now, these rules were determined by Bitcoin Core, but they have realized that these rules do not work anymore. Transactions bypassed the filters, and at some point, carrying them around became a burden to the node runners themselves. Imagine you're using an outdated ad blocker, but instead of filtering out ads, it now also filters out legitimate content you might be interested in. That's what mempool filters do, and that's why Bitcoin Core is slowly relaxing these filters. This has been discussed for over 2 years. It is not a sudden decision. The goal of this change is not to help transactions to slip through more easily. The goal is to improve your node's prediction of what is going to be in the next block. Most people misrepresent this part. They say, quote, it's to turn Bitcoin into a shitcoin. But that is just a false statement at best, or a manipulation tactic at worst. Let's tie it back to proof of work and why fees are the actual filter that keeps Bitcoin secure and prevents spam reasonably well. Satoshi realized that there is no technique that could slow down block production and prevent denial of service attacks in a decentralized system other than proof of work. Fees prevent you from filling blocks with an infinite number of transactions. All the other options would introduce some form of trust or open the door for censorship. Nothing works other than proof of work. He was smart enough to design a system where the proof of work that goes into block production is minted into the monetary unit of the system itself. You spend energy, you get sats. This slows down block production. How do you slow down transactions within those blocks? You spend the sats themselves. Original earned from block production as fees for the transaction within the block itself. This idea is truly genius, and it's the only reason why Bitcoin can exist. All other attempts of creating decentralized money have failed to solve this step. Think about it. Without knowing who you are, whether you're one person pretending to be 1,000 or 1,000 people pretending to be one, Bitcoin defends itself and anyone who runs nodes in the Bitcoin system from spam by making you pay for your activity. People sometimes counter this by saying the economic demand for decentralized data storage is higher than the monetary use case. First of all, I think that's just wrong. There are way cheaper ways to store data. We have shitcoins for this. And the value of having decentralized neutral internet money is beyond comparison. However, there is a much deeper concern here. If you truly believe this, I ask you, what is Bitcoin worth to you? If you think Bitcoin can't succeed as money, be competitive, why do you even care? If you're not willing to pay fees for the use case that we all believe Bitcoin is designed for, money, and you believe that no one is willing to pay for it, how can it even persist into the future? You can't have it all. If Bitcoin is money, which I believe it is, then we need to pay the price to keep it alive. There is no free lunch. Either we centralize or we pay the price of decentralization. I know where I stand. Peace. Okay, so that's Callie's post. And whether or not you agree with Callie is not the point. I like the way that he's going about it. It's just a level-headed argument. He's not calling anybody names. He's not pulling that weird crap that we always do in politics where the Nazi people are being called Nazis. It's childish beyond anything. I thought it was childish back in 2017. This is just calling people Nazis because they're running knots is stupid. And there's some name for the core people, and it's just as bad. And I can't remember what it is. And it doesn't matter. We're tearing each other apart, and it doesn't need to happen. This is not that big of a deal. If you don't want to run version 30 of Bitcoin Core, then don't. Run version 29.0. Or if you want to have your mempool capable of being able to see and react to sub 1 Satoshi fees, then by all means, upgrade to 29.1. Right now, I'm still on 28 something. I have never felt compelled to immediately upgrade any of my Bitcoin Core versions. And yes, I run Bitcoin Core. I'm not going to run 30. Not until these people somehow or another get their collected shit together and, I don't know, come to some kind of agreement or come to some stop, or at least stop treating each other like the fucking enemy. You want to destroy Bitcoin? Sometimes people say, oh, well, apathy will destroy Bitcoin. You know what else can destroy Bitcoin? Infighting at the highest levels of people who know how to actually build the system. That can really screw this up. The filters, whether there's filters on or filters off, dude, that's your choice. If you want filters, then you run 29. Or if you want to run 30 and still run filters, you go into the config file and then you change everything back. This entire argument is completely unnecessary. But let's see what Nick Szabo has to say about this. Atlas 21, Bitcoin Core version 30 incoming. Nick Szabo breaks silence after 5 years. Oh, 5 years it's been. Holy shit. Bitcoin Core developers have released the second test version of the Bitcoin Core version 30 upgrade. On September the 28th, the Bitcoin Core Project X account announced the availability of a new release candidate for testing, calling it a new major release. The upgrade gradually removes the old legacy wallet infrastructure and introduces a simplified command system, but the main controversies concern changes to the policies related to the op return opcode, which allows arbitrary data to be embedded in transactions. The expansion of data limits removes the default cap of 80 bytes, raising it to a virtually unlimited level, up to nearly 4 megabytes per transaction output. Now, some users argue that the network should be used exclusively for financial transactions, not for data storage. According to them, extensive use of op return would permanently bloat the blockchain, since every full node must retain the data, increasing operational cost. Furthermore, the network could be flooded with spam and malware. Another part of the community argues that if users pay the fees, they should be able to use block space as they wish, while market forces will naturally limit malicious uses through transaction fees. The upgrade to version 30 is expected by the end of October, although the precise date remains flexible due to ongoing testing and developer debates. And here we come to Nick Szabo. On September 28th, cypherpunk pioneer Nick Szabo returned to X after nearly 5 years of absence, joining the debate. He stated that network fees, described by developer Callie as the spam filter, protect miners but do not provide sufficient disincentive to protect full nodes. Szabo says, quote, fees protect the miners, but they don't provide enough disincentive to protect the full nodes. This has always been a problem, of course, but increasing the op return allowance will likely make this problem worse. It also will increase legal risks. He further added, quote, it's an open legal issue almost everywhere, suggesting that nodes could be held legally liable for harmful data stored on the blockchain. A court case highlighted by attorney Joe Carlasare, I think is how you pronounce it, ruled that node operators are not liable if they don't have knowledge or control of the data. Szabo noted that one argument in favor of Core is that data can be hidden in other ways, but op return data is prunable. Quote, this suggests that allowing more data on op return conceivably may reduce legal risks, Nick Szabo said. However, a counter-argument holds that illegal content in standard format, thus readily viewable by common software, quote, is more likely to impress lawyers, judges, and jurors, and thus is legally more risky than data that has been broken up or hidden and thus requires specialized software to reconstruct, the cypherpunk noted. And that, I guess, would be Nick Szabo. I want to read this sentence. It is an open legal issue almost everywhere, suggesting that nodes could be held legally liable for harmful data stored on the blockchain. If you think Bitcoin nodes are the only, for lack of a better term, servers that contain illicit material, you are wrong. AT&T data centers have illicit material on them. I guarantee it. AWS has illicit material on it. I guarantee it. Google servers have illicit material on it. I guarantee it. Will the feds raid those facilities? Or do you think they're really just going to come knock on 20,000 doors in 174 different countries around the world and say, I need to see your node? Really? Really? And then if we let that happen, that's on us. That would be on us, guys. It's this entire argument is crap. All right. But the real damage isn't about, illicit material on my node. It's not about illicit material on your node. It's about the infighting between the NOTS guys and the core guys. And we've seen this before. Back in 2017, it was the big blockers versus the small blockers. And the small blockers won, mostly. We did get a block size increase, but not the way that the big blockers wanted. There were some people that were calling for like 16 megabyte blocks. And most were calling for anywhere between 4 and 8 megabyte blocks. But the small blockers did the user activated soft fork, UASF. If you ever see somebody like Samson Moe wearing a hat that says UASF, that's where that hat is from. It's from the 2017 era. We won. We were like, fork it. Go ahead, fork it. And they did. The big blockers forked it, and it failed immediately because there was an off by one error in the code that nobody caught. And if everybody had gone along with it instead of fighting back, we would have been up shit creek. So, but here we are again. It's just, the whole thing is a waste of our time. So let's talk about people who are trying to do other work that makes sense in the space. Plan B Network launches an $850,000 Bitcoin pitch contest called CypherTank, taps Tether and Blockstream chiefs as judges. This is Vivek Sin out of Bitcoin Magazine. Plan B Network and the Plan B VC Fund have unveiled CypherTank, a Bitcoin-focused pitch competition set to take place in Lugano during the Plan B Forum. The initiative, offering over $850,000 in total prizes, aims to spotlight innovative Bitcoin projects and establish Lugano as a premier Bitcoin hub. The competition will feature 11 carefully selected projects, 8 for-profit and 3 non-profit, competing across various categories, including on-chain Bitcoin technology, Lightning Network applications, peer-to-peer innovations, and solutions for emerging markets. For-profit winners will share a $450,000 pre-authorized investment via a capped SAFE, or SAFE, from the Plan B VC Fund, along with $200,000 in incubation and acceleration services at the Lugano Plan B Hub. Quote, CypherTank is designed to give Bitcoin founders not only capital, but a global stage, said Giacomo Zucco, director of the Plan B Network. Quote, by recording real negotiations, scoring pitches, and sharing episodes online, we're amplifying innovation and drawing attention to Lugano as a Bitcoin hub, end quote. The competition has attracted an impressive panel of judges, including industry leaders such as Paolo Ardoino from Tether, Adam Back from Blockstream, Matt Odell from 1031, Mike Harmuz from Lightning Ventures, and Preston Pish from Ego Death. These experts will evaluate projects across multiple rounds, with semifinals scheduled for October 22nd and finals on October the 27th, 2025. Nonprofit projects will compete in categories spanning human rights protection, scientific breakthroughs, and Lugano Bitcoin Citadel initiatives. The winning nonprofits will share a $200,000 non-dilutive grant from the Plan B Foundation, with potential additional grants from judges. CypherTank is the first Bitcoin-only pitch series that will film real founder-investor negotiations, combine them with judge panel scoring, and distribute the episodes globally. Episodes will be released across YouTube, Rumble, and X by the end of 2025. Applications are now open for both for-profit startups and non-profit projects. The initiative represents a significant step in Bitcoin's evolution, offering not just funding, but also a platform for showcasing innovation in the Bitcoin space. The competition structure, combining investment opportunities with global visibility, positions it as a potential catalyst for the next wave of Bitcoin development and adoption. For more information and applications, interested founders can visit the official application portal, and that is a link to the URL that goes to the official application portal, which is a Google Docs URL, by the way, just in case you're interested. Again, as normal, all of the stories that I read to you today, the URL directly to that story will be in the show notes. If you want to go look at the official application portal, you just need to click on the URL for this particular story, which is about the Plan B network launching the Bitcoin pitch contest. I'm excited about this. This could actually turn into something really cool, especially if the people that are doing the video, if the video team is really good with editing and really have really good equipment, good lighting, I mean, like, do it professionally, there's no reason that this couldn't be like a hit series on YouTube. Absolutely no reason in the world not for it to happen. All right, USDT and USDC dominate $46 billion in quarterly stablecoin inflows. Ezra Reguera is going to tell us about this from Cointelegraph. Stablecoins recorded more than $46 billion in net inflows in the last 90 days, highlighting the rising demand for United States dollar-pegged assets in the crypto space. On Monday, data tracker RWA.XYZ showed that Tether's USDT stablecoin led the quarter with $19.6 billion in net inflows, followed by Circle with $12.3 billion, and Athena synthetic stablecoin Athena USDE also stood out with $9 billion. And then there's some other players like MakerDAO and PayPal USD, blah, blah, blah. But emerging, oh God, I'm not, they mention Ripple, and I'm just going to skip that because it's a shit coin and you should stay away from it. Stablecoin net inflows measure the difference between the amount of stablecoins minted and redeemed over a given period. Positive inflows mean more tokens were added to the circulation than removed, and that signals demand for dollar-pegged stablecoins. Stablecoin inflows totaled $56.5 billion over the past 6 months, with only $10.8 billion recorded in the second quarter. The third quarter accounted for the bulk, highlighting how quickly demand has accelerated, driven not only by USDT and USDC, but the rise of algorithmic entrants like USDE. Pausing to say, be very careful of the algorithmic stablecoin. And if you don't know why, then you weren't here during the FTX and FTX, Alameda, BlockFi, and was it algorithmic or something like that. It all collapsed together, but one of the things that happened at the same time was that a dollar-pegged algorithmic stablecoin completely failed its peg, and dominoes started to fall. So just this algorithmic stuff, I don't trust it at all. All right, so now, Tether's USDT accounted for the majority in both the second and third quarter, minting $19.6 billion this quarter and $9.2 billion in April to June. And then they talk about USDC. And then they talk about Ethereum, but there was something in here. Where did it go? Hold on for a sec. Yeah, this is what's so important about this. Stablecoin net inflows jumped from $10.8 billion in Q2 to $45.6 in Q3. That's a 324% surge in the demand for stablecoins. I know that a lot of my audience is not interested in stablecoins, but stablecoins are interested in you. Well, more likely, the United States money printer is interested in destroying whatever wealth you have left. Why do I say it that way? If you haven't heard me talk about it on this podcast, that means you're probably new. Welcome. The United States now has the best vehicle in USDT and USDC, but moreover, just USDT, the Tether stablecoin. They have the best vehicle to print an immense amount of debt instrumentation, because Tether is going to buy the United States Treasury bonds that are printed, and they have a huge war chest to do it. Not only do they have a standing war chest, they have gold, they have Bitcoin, they have land, and they make a shit ton of money every quarter in net revenue on maybe 70 people. They don't have 700, they don't have 7,000, they don't have 17,000. No, they got like 70 people, and they generate billions of dollars a quarter in net revenue, not gross, net revenue. They have more money than they know what to do with, and they always buy United States Treasury. Now that the United States has a buyer of first, middle, and last resort for debt instrumentation that they create at quote unquote printing money, then that is going to be used hand over fist. But here's the catch. Most of the debt that's printed by the United States government is going to be exported to other countries via Tether. We've never seen anything like this before in the history of economics. It's not going to be good. It certainly won't be pleasant, but in the short to medium term, it's going to be a wild ride, and we need to figure out how to position ourselves so that we don't get torn up on the other end of all this when it all goes tits up, and it will. How? Buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, and don't go to Poland, because they have advanced a strict crypto bill sparking public backlash. Helen Parks from Cointelegraph. Polish lawmakers approved a bill regulating the crypto asset market, introducing key restrictions and establishing a dedicated supervisory authority. Poland's lower house of parliament, the Sejm, and I can't pronounce it right, SEJM, voted in favor of a Crypto Asset Market Act on Friday, sending the bill to the Senate for consideration. Bill 1424, which has yet to reflect the apparent third reading vote in the Sejm, introduced a licensing regime for crypto asset service providers, aligning Poland's regulations with the European Union's Market in Crypto Assets Regulation, or the MiCA framework. The bill's passage has sparked a strong community response over its restrictive provisions, which introduce criminal liability for violations, including fines of up to 10 million Polish zlotys, or $2.8 million US, and prison terms of up to 2 years. The bill designates the Polish Financial Supervision Authority, and I cannot pronounce the name, it's like the KNF, as the primary regulator for the country's crypto asset market. Under the legislation, all CASPs must obtain a license from the KNF to operate in Poland. To secure a license, CASPs are required to submit a comprehensive application detailing their corporate structure, capital adequacy, international controls, internal controls and compliance systems, risk management policies, and anti-money laundering procedures. Yay! If the bill is passed and signed into law, CASPs in Poland will have a 6-month transitional period to obtain the required license. Failure to do so could result in cessation of operations and legal consequences. Receiving 230 votes in favor and 196 against, Poland's Crypto Asset Market Act has sparked significant backlash from both the crypto industry and some Polish lawmakers. Janusz Kolowski, a member of the Sejm from the opposition Law and Justice Party, criticized Poland's implementation of the EU's MiCA regulation, calling it overly restrictive and warning it could jeopardize the country's crypto market and its 3 million crypto holders. Quote, this is the largest and most restrictive cryptocurrency law in the European Union, Kowalski wrote on X. He highlighted the law's excessive length, describing it as 118 pages of overregulation compared with much shorter crypto legislation in Germany, the Czech Republic, and other EU member states. Tomasz Mencen, a Polish politician and blockchain advocate, highlighted the challenges of implementing the new crypto legislation amid Poland's lengthy regulatory procedures. The KNF is the slowest acting regulator in the EU, with an average application processing time of 30 months. Holy crap, 30 months they're going to have to wait to actually get this through if this average holds up. You can't even do business that way. Anyway, according to Mencen, this GEM's approval of the bill signals a potential destruction of the blockchain and stablecoin industry in Poland. He urged the Senate and President Karol Nawrocki to step in and veto the legislation to safeguard Poland's crypto market. Mencen's brother, Sławomir Mencen, was among the Polish presidential candidates who vowed to create a Bitcoin reserve if elected in 2025. In the first round on May 18, 2025, he secured third place with almost 15% of the vote, trailing behind no way I can pronounce this name, Rafal, that I can pronounce. I think it's Trzaskowski, and Nawrocki. In the runoff of June 1st, Nawrocki won the presidency with 50.9% of the vote, and days before the election, he pledged to support crypto, standing up against tyrannical regulations restricting freedom and innovation. Quote, in Poland, innovations must emerge, not regulations. As president of the Republic of Poland, I will be the guarantor that tyrannical regulations restricting your freedom do not come into effect, Nawrocki wrote on X, May the 28th. Okay, we shall see. We shall see. I don't have a hope in hell that this thing is going to get vetoed in Poland. I'll bet you Nawrocki's just one more globalist who says he's not, and y'all voted for him, and now he's in, and you guys are probably going to have a really heavy-handed crypto regulation bill become law. Let's run the numbers. Energy getting hit in the crotch, man. Brent North Sea is down 3.5 points to 67.66. West Texas Intermediate down 3.8 to 63.17. Natural gas going the other direction, 2% to the upside, now at 326 per thousand cubic feet. Gasoline is down 2.5 points to just under $2 a gallon, and Merbon crude is down 3.19% to 68.98. Shiny metal rocks are doing well, except for palladium, which is down 1 1/3. Gold is up 1 1/4 to a new all-time high of $3,855.06. Platinum is up 1.8. Silver up 0.65. Copper is up 2.63%. Ag is mostly mixed. Let's see. What do we got here? What's the biggest winner today? Biggest winner is cocoa, 0.75% to the upside. Biggest loser is coffee, 1.5 to the downside. Live cattle down 1/3. Lean hogs down 1/2. Feeder cattle down 1/3. The S&P is up 0.11%. NASDAQ up 0.43%. The Dow is off by 0.17%, and the S&P Mini is off by a full 0.5 point. $113,900 per Bitcoin gives us a $2.27 trillion market cap. We can now purchase 29.7 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,927,713.67 of. And average fees are low, 0.02 BTC, taken in fees on a per block basis. But right now, the roughly 45 blocks carrying 165,000 unconfirmed transactions are going for high priority rates of 7 Satoshis per VByte. Standard transaction, that's going to cost you just a little over $1. Low priority is going to get you in for 5 sats per VByte. And 1.04 zettahashes per second on the hash rate for Bitcoin again. So we are holding above the 1 zettahash threshold. I wonder how long that will happen. It looks like we're due for in 2 days, we've got a difficulty adjustment coming, and it looks to be a 4.8% upwards adjustment. So yeah, lots and lots of hash rate came online all of a sudden. And from BTC forking over, that was Friday's show of the Bitcoin and podcast. Tulips with 1,000 sats says, Bitcoiners are the only ones having fun staying poor. What a magnificent line, sir. Regarding the fork stuff, I do not agree with people pushing or publishing out of context private idea explorations. That is how self-censoring starts. And if you have your sats in cold storage, you should sleep like a baby. I sleep like a baby with not enough sats. On the other hand, MSTR/Coinbase Bitcoiners will wake up one day on the wrong side of the fork, wondering why their BTC is just tulips and went to zero. Bitcoin on board with 100 sats. Some emojis that I can't see. Wartime with 133 says cheers. With another 133, he says boost. With another 133, he says zap this man. With another 133, he says good rant. With another 133, he says cheers again. And let's see here. Oh yeah, Wartime with another 133 sat says, yeah, I didn't know anything about a fork potentially. I welcome it. It's been a while since we got free coins. Yeah. Pies finishing us out with 121 sat says, thank you, sir. No, thank you. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. Strategy notches third smallest Bitcoin purchase in 2025 as dividend payments approach. We got some dividends that he's got to pay out, huh? Andre Bagansky from decrypt.co. Strategy notched its third smallest Bitcoin acquisition for the year on Monday, disclosing that it only bought $22 million worth of the asset. The Tyson's Corner, Virginia-based firm now owns roughly 64,000. It's like over 640,000. This is a huge typo. Please decrypt. Do some editing. It's all worth $73.1 billion as of Monday, as Bitcoin climbed past 114,000, according to crypto data provider CoinGecko. Although the Bitcoin purchase that Strategy disclosed on Monday was its smallest since mid-August, it appears that the move was not a result of constrained funding because Strategy signaled that it had raised $128 million, effectively pocketing the difference of, I guess, $126 million in cash. And that cash came from selling $116 million worth of common shares. At the same time, Strategy sold $11.3 million of Strife offering and $400,000 worth of Stride offering, featuring a 10% dividend. STRD was unveiled as Strategy's third type of preferred shares in June. Quote, there was an extra $106 million, which we can presume was there for cash interest and to fund future dividends, including but not limited to those that are due tomorrow, TD Cowen analyst Lance Vitanza told Decrypt. Strategy is scheduled to pay its first dividend to STRD holders on Tuesday, on top of payouts for its STRC, STRK, and STRD offerings as declared in an SEC filing earlier this month. Strategy's obligation on STRD is currently around $30 million per quarter, Vitanza said. That's a very small amount, he added. And then they talk about the history of Strategy, which we've been through so many times, it's not necessary to go through. So we're going to get to BitChat and Madagascar. I guess there's shit going down in Madagascar as a surge in protesting over water and energy has erupted. This is Atlas 21. Recent riots in Madagascar's capital have triggered a spike in the use of BitChat, the decentralized peer-to-peer messaging app developed by Jack Dorsey. The surge in app activity mirrors trends already observed in Nepal and Indonesia in recent weeks. The protest began on September 25th in Antananarivo, I can't pronounce it, the Malagasy capital, in response to the country's water and energy crisis. Clashes with law enforcement and looting incidents led to the government to remove the energy minister and impose a curfew. On September the 28th, open source developer Kali reported the surge in BitChat downloads on the island, sharing screenshots of media coverage of the protests. Google Trends data confirms the trend. Searches for BitChat rose from 0 to 100 on September the 26th over a 90-day period in Madagascar, especially in the capital. Related queries like BitChat download and how to use BitChat entered the top 5 search terms labeled as rising topics with exponential activity growth. Chrome stats statistics reveal that BitChat has reached a total of 365,000 downloads since launch, with over 21,000 installations in the last day and more than 71,000 installations in the past week. However, the data do not specify the detailed geographic origin of these numbers. The surge in Madagascar mirrors similar dynamics observed weeks earlier in Nepal, where violent anti-corruption protests led to a brief social media ban, pushing protesters to seek alternative channels to organize. Indonesia also saw a similar increase in BitChat downloads following corruption-related protests. This is good. I don't like that there's riots and shit going on in any of these places, whether it's Madagascar or Nepal or wherever. But it's good that they have BitChat. It's good that they have this. It never ceases to amaze me how humans will develop exactly what humans need to have when they need to have it. Not before. Not before, because we didn't come up with Bitcoin until it was very clear that 2008, housing crisis and all the debacle that came after that we were just going to print money into infinity. No, we didn't learn from 2001 when they were printing money out the wazoo, even though now when we print money, it makes 2001 look like nothing. Now when we print money, it makes 2008 look like nothing. No. We had to go through the housing crisis. We had to go through 2001. And if you don't remember, when those buildings came down, there was a lot of money printing going on afterwards. There was a lot of money printing, not like what we see today, but there was a lot of money printing. And it was actually it was potentially catastrophic even back then. People were like going, wow, you're printing a lot of money. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm telling you, man, Tether is going to really, really invigorate the money printer over in Washington, D.C. But coming back to BitChat, if you have not looked at this, you should go look at it. It doesn't mean that you're going to start using it. You may not have any need to use it. And if you don't, like I keep coming back to this, people are like, nobody uses it, therefore BitChat failed. No, you're not using it. Because you don't really need it yet, do you? Wait till something happens when you have to have BitChat. That's when you're going to be happy that it exists. So please stop saying that something failed just because you don't use it or none of the people that you know use it. That doesn't mean anything. Your little observable world is not the whole world. Right? So it's very clear that BitChat is being used by a lot of people in a lot of different places. Now on to Swift. Yes, Swift, blockchain-based ledger for 24/7 cross-border payments. Jamie Crawley, CoinDesk.com. Global traditional finance payment system Swift said it is adding a blockchain-based ledger to its network. Swift is working with a group of over 30 financial institutions to build a ledger that can make cross-border payments 24/7 based on a prototype by Ethereum developers consensus, according to an announcement on Monday. Quote, The ledger will extend Swift's financial communication role into a digital environment, facilitating banks' movement of regulated tokens value across digital ecosystems, Swift said. Swift is a messaging system that supports international bank transactions and is used by more than 11,000 financial institutions across 200 countries. Facing suggestions that it could be made obsolete by adoption of digital assets, particularly stablecoins, Swift has been experimenting with blockchain technology and tokenization for several years to try to get in front of this potential disruption. Swift said it envisages that the ledger will act as a real-time log of transactions between financial institutions, record sequencing and validating. Between financial institutions, record sequencing and validating transactions, and enforcing its rules through smart contracts. All right, terrible sentence, but that is the final sentence of this. You're too late, Swift. You're too late. It doesn't matter what you come up with. It doesn't matter. The fact that they're going with Ethereum is laughable. It's a Rube Goldberg machine, and it's not going to do Swift any favors whatsoever. All they had to do was use Bitcoin, but that would legitimize Bitcoin, which would effectively say, we don't need Swift in the first place. That's essentially what's going to happen no matter what they do. Tether is here. Swift is going away. This is a Hail Mary pass like all of the other Hail Mary passes that we've seen. Let's move on to Vanguard, who has bent both knees. They're offering third-party Bitcoin ETFs to investors, according to Alex Larry from Bitcoin News. Vanguard, the $10 trillion asset management giant known for being cautious, is quietly getting ready to allow its brokerage clients to buy digital asset exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. This would be a big deal for the world's second largest asset manager, which has been opposed to Bitcoin products for years. Vanguard has been opposed to Bitcoin ETFs since their launch in 2024. Fidelity and BlackRock launched their highly successful Bitcoin ETFs, the Fidelity Wise Origin Bitcoin Fund and the iShares Bitcoin Trust. Vanguard not only chose not to launch its own Bitcoin ETF, but also blocked its brokerage clients from buying spot Bitcoin ETFs from other funds when they first came out, citing volatility and long-term returns. But client demand and a more favorable regulatory environment seem to be pushing the company to change its stance. Quote, "They're being very methodical in their approach, understanding the dynamics have been changing since 2024, a source familiar with Vanguard's plans told Crypto in America. According to multiple reports, the company is laying the groundwork and talking to external partners about allowing clients to buy select third-party digital asset ETFs on its brokerage platform. Vanguard is still not expected to launch its own Bitcoin products, though. Instead, it will follow the model of Schwab by offering access to ETFs that are managed by others. Much of the speculation around Vanguard's shift has been around its CEO, Salim Ramji. He is a former BlackRock executive, and he helped launch iBit, which has become one of the most successful ETFs in history with over $80 billion in assets under management already. He took over at Vanguard in mid-2024, and many expected the company's stance on Bitcoin to soften. At a conference earlier this year, Ramji highlighted that Vanguard would not create its own digital asset ETFs, but he dodged questions about whether clients would be able to buy third-party products through their brokerage platform. That was enough to set off chatter on Wall Street. Bloomberg analyst Eric Balchunas summed it up on social media, quote, "Vanguard is looking to end Bitcoin ETF ban, aka bend the knee, LOL. We heard chatter of this too. Smart of them," end quote. Vanguard is considering its stance for several reasons. Analysts believe the first one is the client demand. They have over 50 million investors. Vanguard has faced backlash from some customers who had to move assets elsewhere to get Bitcoin exposure. Offering ETFs would help with client retention and prevent outflows to competitors. The second one is regulation. Since 2024, U.S. regulators have become more Bitcoin friendly. The SEC recently approved new listing standards to fast-track ETF applications, and the SEC and CFTC have been working together to harmonize digital asset rules. This regulatory clarity has reduced the risk for traditional financial firms to enter the space. And third, the success of the Bitcoin ETFs is hard to ignore. Spot Bitcoin ETFs have pulled in over $140 billion in inflows since their launch and hold more than 1.3 million BTC together. That level of institutional interest has made Bitcoin impossible for Vanguard to ignore. So another domino falls. Oh well, you knew it was going to happen. It was inevitable, and Vanguard has bent the knee. So for all the people, I want to go back to the very head of the show. For all the people that are nervous about the core versus knots battle, I'm here to tell you from experience, don't be. If you don't want to run version 30 of core, you don't have to. And there's no reason to even upgrade. Like, let's say everything was fine and there was no battle in knots versus core. They weren't going to do this thing with the lifting of the op return limits, and it was just going to be another major upgrade. I still wouldn't upgrade to it until that thing's been burnt in for like 6 months. I have never upgraded to the newest, latest, greatest of Bitcoin Core or even LND for that matter, except for a couple of times. When LND, there was like a few zero-day bug in it a couple of times. And that one, yeah, you wanted to update as soon as you found out, but that really hasn't been the case with Bitcoin Core software. And I don't want to run knots. And it's not because I don't like Luke Dasher. I don't know. I've never met the man. He's a little crazy, or at least some people say. I don't care. Chances are good for, software development at this level. You probably want somebody who's a little slightly insane. I don't know, but my only problem with knots is that it's really just Luke Dasher and maybe a couple of other people that are maintaining it. And until they get like a real huge team of people that are all working on it, like people work on Bitcoin Core, I'm just going to let it sit over there and they can do knot stuff and, be Nazis or whatever the hell we're calling everybody these days. But there's no reason to panic. See, I fell into a real malaise during the 2017 block size wars. And a lot of people did, because this was the first time we had seen this kind of schism at the level we were seeing it. But there really wasn't a schism inside of Bitcoin Core. And in this case, there still kind of isn't, other than the fact that they kind of booted Luke Dasher over to the side and Luke Dasher's doing knots. And so from that standpoint, there's kind of a rift, but not really. The 2017 block size stuff, it was all like, basically it was a bunch of non-developers shouting into the wind how Bitcoin fees were too high and we needed more transactions per block to get those fees down. And then it turns out that most of those transactions were just fake transactions to pump up the fees, so that the argument for more block space made sense to people that didn't understand how Bitcoin worked. It was propaganda. And I fear that we're falling into that shit again. And if I knew then what I know now, I would not have felt like I got kicked in the crotch 27 times straight. Because I felt nauseous. There was a couple of days where I literally thought I was going to throw up. I just felt sick. Because I was like, we're destroying it. We're like, this infighting has got to stop. We're just sending a signal to the world that we don't know what we're doing and that we're going to tear the very thing that we love, dearly apart limb by limb. I wouldn't have felt that but then again, there's no way that I could have known what the outcome of that was going to be unless I went through it. And that's why I'm unfazed by this. If for whatever reason you are feeling sick to your stomach about this, or you're like thinking, I'm just going to sell it all and just be done with it, take a deep breath and don't act rashly. Think about what you're doing. Think about what Bitcoin's been through. Think about the types of attacks that we've weathered. If you have not read The Block Size Wars, there's a whole book. I believe it's entitled The Block Size Wars. Go read it so that you can have an in-depth knowledge of what a lot of us that were there in 2017 experienced. It was a terrible time in Bitcoin, and it was very, very frightening. And I know that there's people out there right now that are also very, very frightened, and they do not have the luxury of having gone through the 2017 block size war, being there, being on Bitcoin Twitter, seeing what was being said to each other, seeing how Bitcoin was being ripped apart at the seams, right? I have that knowledge. I'm not saying that everything's going to be just fine and there's going to be unicorns out there flying around farting rainbows. But I am saying that the kind of fear that this kind of thing can gin up will destroy relationships forever if you let it. And it will make you worry about shit that if you get to the other side of it, you realize how much time and energy you wasted worrying about it. I was worried all the time in 2017. Bitcoin's just fine. And Bitcoin will be fine again. If you want to wade into that war, just be prepared. You're probably not going to feel good about it. The best way to do this is use your filters on Nostr and Facebook or whatever you use, and block the words KNOTS and CORE. It's amazing what that can do. Do that, and I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.